The British Grand Prix presented not only high-tension racing action, but also opened a new chapter of internal tension at Ferrari. After finishing in fourth place, Lewis Hamilton made a sharp comment that immediately shook the Ferrari headquarters. It didn't take long for Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur to respond, raising even bigger questions. Is this the beginning of a hidden conflict between Hamilton and Ferrari management? Let's discuss it. Hamilton may have only finished fourth at the British Grand Prix, but it wasn't his placement that caught the world's attention. In fact, it was his post-race comments that really shook Ferrari's internal foundations. "The SF25 is the most difficult car I've ever driven," Hamilton said, referring to the car's repeated loss of traction throughout the race. It wasn't just an emotional complaint from a frustrated racer, it was a warning signal sent directly from the battlefield, a stern warning from a seven-time world champion. More surprising than the content of the statement was how Ferrari's boss, Fred Vasseur, responded to it. Not with analysis or concern, but with a light laugh that sounded like a form of denial. Hamilton described the Ferrari SF25 as snappy, unstable, and extremely difficult to control throughout the race at Silverstone, from the fast Copse corner to the wet and dry sectors. It was a fight. It was unstable, and it never gave the seven-time world champion complete confidence. When asked to comment on Hamilton's scathing remarks, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur chuckled and compared them to Max Verstappen's comments about his Red Bull car. Instead of delving deeper or expressing concern, Vasseur made a comparison. To many observers, this response sounded like an attempt to quell anxiety and distract from the real crisis. However, for those who closely follow Ferrari's internal dynamics, this was more than just one bad race. It was an early warning. It was a stark warning about the technical foundations and direction of next season's Car 1 that, if ignored, could send Ferrari into the same cycle of failure. More surprising than the content of his comments was his attitude. Openly admitted that he had not spoken directly to Lewis Hamilton about the car's balance issues. When asked about it, he simply responded. He said the car was very snappy. But that's not always true. This remark may sound trivial, but the implications are much deeper. It suggests that the Ferrari team boss doubts the real-time judgment of a seven-time world champion, who had just risked his reputation to guide the SF252, a fourth place finish in challenging track conditions. This is no longer just a technical disagreement. It's a glaring sign of a breakdown in communication and a potential loss of trust between driver and management. If Hamilton's warnings are completely disregarded, what value does the voice of a senior leader have in the cockpit? Is his feedback merely a formality, or worse, being ignored in the team's technical decision-making process? The situation at Ferrari is increasingly complex and fraught with questions. Team principal Frédéric Vasseur openly admitted that the strategic decision that caused Charles Leclerc to crash and fall to 14th place at the British Grand Prix was a major mistake. They made the decision to switch to slick tires on the first lap, even though the track was still wet and slippery. It was a hasty and almost reckless decision that immediately killed Leclerc's chances of competing at the front. More interesting, however, is how the narrative unfolded afterward. Despite performing outside the point zone, Leclerc wasn't the target of significant internal criticism. The team's reaction was mild and even protective. There were no harsh tones. There was no painful analysis. It was as if the mistake were just a normal incident that didn't need to be blown out of proportion. In contrast, Lewis Hamilton, who saved Ferrari's day with a heroic fourth-place finish, has been the subject of internal debate. His post-race comments, in which he said the SF25 was the hardest car to drive at Silverstone. There was skepticism. There was resistance. It was as if Hamilton had crossed a line. Ferrari is facing more than just a technical challenge. The company is in the midst of a crucial cultural transition. Hamilton's presence should be a catalyst for major change, symbolizing champion standards and a winning mentality and ushering in a long-awaited internal revolution. However, what happened at Silverstone exposed a harsh reality: miscommunication, defensive management, and resistance to change. When Hamilton says this car won't shut up, it's not just frustration or a play on words. It's a report straight from the front lines. It's a form of emotional data that only a team willing to listen can understand. Instead of taking it seriously, however, Ferrari responded with sneers, comparisons, and ultimately, ignorance. This wasn't about a faulty setup or an unmanageable car. It was about a great team that wasn't ready to face the mirror, now held by a 7-time world champion. The real problem wasn't just the unmanageable SF25. The bigger problem was Ferrari's unwillingness to listen to the one person on the team with a voice, someone with experience and the courage to speak up. When the team boss said he hadn't spoken to Lewis, it wasn't just a matter of time or being busy. It was a conscious decision. In a dynamic as sharp as Ferrari's, a decision like that could be the beginning of a major rift. Hamilton wasn't just a fast driver. He was a symbol of a movement, a political force, and a voice for change that couldn't be ignored. He came to Ferrari not just to win, but also to change the way the team thinks and acts. If Ferrari is only interested in maintaining internal order by eliminating voices considered too bold or outspoken, then they are taking a risk far greater than losing points in the standings. They are risking the legitimacy, direction, and future of the team itself, amid the ongoing tension following the British Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc addressed the increasingly publicized internal situation within Ferrari. When asked about Lewis Hamilton's comments and Frédéric Vasseur's casual response, Leclerc gave a diplomatic yet meaningful answer. "I'm not in a position to judge the communication between Lewis and Fred, but I can say one thing. When a driver talks about how the car feels, you should always listen." Leclerc acknowledged that the Silverstone race was one of the most challenging weekends of his career this season. A costly strategy decision on the opening lap left him in 14th place, and he admitted his frustration. "Yes, I'm disappointed. We took a big risk from the start, and it didn't work out. But I don't want to blame anyone. It's not about one person, it's about the team. We win together, we fail together." When asked if he felt Hamilton's voice was being ignored by management, however, Leclerc paused before answering. "Lewis has incredible experience. He brings a different perspective, which can be invaluable for the team's development. But, as with everything, adaptation takes time. At Ferrari, everything is intense and in the spotlight. The important thing is that we listen to each other, not silence each other." He also emphasized that now is not the time for Ferrari to get bogged down in internal drama. The season isn't over yet. There are still many races ahead, and we must unite. Lewis, Fred, and I all have to sit down at the table and speak honestly. Otherwise, we will continue to make the same mistakes. Silverstone is more than just another drama-filled race. It's the setting for a clash between two great powers, Ferrari, which is still stuck in its old structure, and Lewis Hamilton, who has arrived with a new vision, mentality, and standards for winning. This Grand Prix showcases more than just competition on the track. It's a meeting point between a past that refuses to change and a future that seeks to break through. When Frédéric Vasseur smiled during the post-race press conference, it wasn't a confident smile. Rather, it was the smile of a leader trying to contain an earthquake beginning to shake the team from within. The results on paper were not the only thing being questioned. The direction, authority, and identity of the team were also being called into doubt. Who really holds the reins? At Maranello, leave your thoughts below.